Welcome back. So our next guest, David Barton. So I want to tell you how we got David up here. Gwen Whiting, who's sitting over here, which still to this day, I always like to tell the story, is one of my favorite all-time interviews. I don't know, it was 5 or 6 years ago at Eclectic Convergence when I interviewed Gwen, and she had me crying on stage, not out of sorrow, but out of laughter. Some of her stories were just so funny. So if you want to see that, you can just go to our Eclectic Convergence site. You can scroll back through the old ones and find it, and it's really, really hysterical. So Gwen connected me with David just recently, and I'm like, absolutely. I mean, if a guy looks like that, why wouldn't we want him here? I mean, we want to actually, you know, this is not tech, as far as I know. Maybe a little tech. It's not AI. No, it's more real estate in gyms. So we're going to have a discussion with David, who I just met for the first time today. And I've talked to him on the phone, obviously, before this. So we'll keep it interactive. I'll ask some questions that we prepared. We'll do the same thing with Q&A after. And just as a reminder, after this, lunch will be served. There's going to be a buffet out there. You come back in, sit down. We're going to honor Barry Beck, our Entrepreneur of the Year, and a bunch of other student winners. Also, it's going to be a very busy lunch, but we'll give you at least 20 or 30 minutes where you can actually eat and chat, and then we'll start the program at the lunch at around 1. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back up to Cornell. Can you guys hear him okay?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Is it okay?
Excellent. So I want to go back before you started David Barton Gyms.
Yes.
So you graduated from Cornell in '88, I believe.
Yes.
Human ecology?
Yes.
Yep.
I did. Yeah.
And what did you do for the 4 years before you started David
Okay.
Barton?
Well, you know, when I was graduating, everybody I knew was going to law school or medical school or going to work at Goldman Sachs, and I wasn't doing anything. So I found out that I could get paid to get a PhD in organizational behavior somewhere. And so I went around and told everybody I was getting a PhD, and I filled out an application, was accepted and all this. And I don't even know what organizational behavior is, to be honest. To this day, I've never read a book on it, but it sounded like something to do. So that was my plan. And then my mother circled an ad in the paper saying you could be a personal trainer. And I went and got this job for $4 an hour. I ripped up my applications to grad school. I was like, this is the coolest thing. I could work in a gym and get paid. This is like 1992. No one had ever heard of this, personal training. It was like a new thing. So I took that job. I took another job at another place. I was so happy. I couldn't live on $4 an hour. So I moved my practice out and became like a freelance personal trainer and realized that I wanted to be in the gym business. And so I started saving my money. And I worked as a trainer 7 days a week, from 5, 6 in the morning until midnight.
And who are you training?
I wound up sort of getting a lot of, I had come from the nightclub business. And I had a lot of these kind of cool downtown people. I also had a lot of the fashion crowd. Fashion was having a big moment in the 90s, like the models, the media people, the designers, and I somehow got into this world. So I had all these like really sort of very well-known, bold-faced names or celebrity fashion people, and I was training them. And I literally worked like around the clock, saving my money until I had a pillowcase full of cash that I could use to open up a gym. And a couple of people gave me a few bucks, but that was most of my money was the pillowcase.
Okay.
That was my capital.
That makes a lot of sense. So, and I'm assuming that word of mouth spread your reputation in the training circuit? So
yes.
Work for this model or that celebrity, and they would connect you to somebody else?
I promoted myself well. I'm a good promoter of myself, and so, you know, I would like show up at like an event and like take my shirt off and just to get like, you know.
Wait, were you like Jack back then as well?
I was yes. When my first gym opened, I was on the cover of a bodybuilding magazine. So I was also competing in bodybuilding, you know, just as a way to sort of get myself some like legitimacy, if you want to call that legitimacy. You know, I also like read a lot about like, you know, the actual science of exercise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not often that I get to interview someone who's shorter than I am. This is kind of fun, actually. So we're competing for the shortest person, the shortest male in the room probably right now, which is good.
Bodybuilding favors the short. It's the only sport that really, well, not the only one, I guess, like riding horses in the ring. Anyway. So you've been described as an intellectual bordering on a nerd. And I really don't get that. I mean, looking at you now, I don't see anything really nerdy. Maybe intellectual. I I have become like a generalist because I needed to, because I had the business, but very much a science nerd, learning physics and chemistry and things that I wanted to train trainers in. So my first gym, I hired all people who had no personal training experience as trainers, and I taught them all. And I taught them physics and chemistry and stuff that trainers didn't really learn. And also, I was an artist and a musician. I had the trainers take figure drawing classes, which I taught, so that they would learn to have like an eye. So I did all these. I kind of had this very broad knowledge base of a lot of different things that I was able to apply in business. And I was I kind of was a frustrated, architect. So I would design my gyms and design people's clothes, and I kind of did like a little bit of everything. So I read a lot. You know. I went to Cornell, which was a good.
Did you play the drums?
Yes, I did. I was a musician. I still am. I'm playing a gig in New York next week, and I keep myself doing it because it's just like kind of my first love.
Yep. And so, by the way, Barry Beck, our Entrepreneur of the Year, also plays the drums.
Oh, really?
So if you noticed downstairs when you walked in,
the drum pins,
the drumsticks,
so cool.
The drum pens, that was actually purposeful. Natalie on our staff learned that about Barry, not about you. I think I learned about you from talking to you. So that was just kind of cool, a little fun fact. Drumstick pens for these guys. So what gave you the inspiration to start David Barton and gyms? And did you have a vision in mind when did you want it to look like a nightclub? I mean, you guys should see these pictures. If you haven't, you could just Google on your phones now. These places are special looking. I want to know what was in your mind when you started?
It was a vision, and it wasn't just the look of the gym, which was, I came out of this nightclub world where when I was young, people in New York lived in the nightclubs, like that's where you saw your friends. And I knew that people, as we were leaving the 80s, people were like putting their toys down. I knew they were going to have to like grow up, and even like, grown-ups had to grow up. Like people were going to start needing a place to see each other during the day. So the people I knew, they wouldn't be caught dead in a gym. And this was, gyms were just, not cool, for lack of a better word. They just, people I knew wouldn't go. And so I wanted to make it okay for cool people to go to the gym. And that was where this kind of brand thing came in. How do you make a gym that's different when every dumbbell weighs the same? But there's, there's environment. There's the subjective experience of going, which could be different, and there's this sort of, I was talking about like people's, identity, affiliating with a brand, which wasn't a thing back then, but I made it, I made it like cool and trendy downtown in New York, and then people like came from all over, but to go to the gym,
And they actually worked out at the gym?
Very much so, yes. Yeah. Also, it was a very serious place to work out, so people were working out and seeing each other and socializing, and I kind of had this amazing mix of people, and
did it surpass your expectations? Like,
oh my God.
Like when you started.
I didn't know what to expect. The first day, like nobody came, and I didn't care. The second day, like there was a couple people came in, I was fine. And then the third day, there was like a line around the block, and I have no idea why, but just word got out, and like people I knew, somebody told somebody, and told two people, and they told two people, and it wait.
Wait, this was all in what year?
1992.
Okay.
And it started in June, and I really very much focused on like taking care of people, and I'd been a trainer, and I just, these gyms, and even today, I think, if you go to a chain gym, and this was like an alternative to the chain movement, but if you go to a chain, like the only time you hear from your gym is when your credit card doesn't go through or something, or you're late with something, and, this is different, really, like, I cared about taking care of people, keeping people, retaining my members, and making them happy. And I just put my head down and I didn't focus on the business side of it. In fact, 5 months into the gym, in November, this woman did my book. She said, you're a millionaire today. You just made $1 million for yourself. And I had no idea. I was just trying to make the place good. And I just kind of did everything. And I was creating this, what eventually was not a huge chain of gyms. It wasn't a big business, but it became a big brand. Like the brand became very well known in the
And actually, so how big was David Barton? How many locations did David Barton have?
When I got out and I sold to my investors, it was...
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
It was only
cell phone.
9. It was 9 locations, but it was a brand play. There were New York, Chicago, Miami. So I was trying to go to places where there were people who would appreciate this, like alternative kind of place. Like, so it wasn't like a clustering of gyms.
Yeah.
I went to specific markets that I thought it would be receptive.
Yeah, and did you, in your mind, treat the non-famous people the same as the famous people? Like, were the famous people and the non-famous people mixing together at your gyms?
Yeah, no, I didn't treat the non-famous people quite as well as the famous people, but I treated them well. No, a lot of the like celebrities wanted to be, have their ass kissed. So I kissed everyone's ass, especially the famous people who, people had to remember their name. I had people at the front desk read. There was this thing that everyone read, and it's still in the New York Post, page 6. And every day I made the front desk read page 6 to know who was who that day, that moment. So that if somebody comes in and they're having their moment, in New York especially, you don't ask their name. You just, so I wanted them to really know who was who. Somebody comes in and there's some local celebrity or some big celebrity.
Yeah.
I don't know the face and the name. I had the trainers read the New York Times headlines so that they could not sound stupid with their
And then did you stop personal training at that point? So you
yeah, I didn't train anybody. Yeah, no.
After you started David Barton Gyms, you.
No, you can only train so many people in one lifetime.
Yeah.
I was working on my second lifetime. I trained people, literally for 4 years. I never took a day off. On Christmas, I was looking for, people who didn't celebrate Christmas so I could train them because their trainers were away. I never wanted to take a day off. I was saving that money, So.
Yeah, so let's talk about that saving money thing. So did you really put it in a pillowcase? Did you
Some of it, yeah. Yes, I did. I literally had a pillowcase, yeah.
And
Pillowcase.
what does it cost to start? If this was a long time ago,
So
so
the
you can
first
tell us,
one,
what does
yeah,
it
the first
take to
one,
start a gym?
the first one was about $300,000. I could never do that today. I mean, every dollar had to do the work of 2. Literally, I built it myself. I slept on the floor of the place once a spider bit me. I just did everything myself. I traded things to get equipment. It was today I would spend, let's say $200-300 a foot just to build it out, which for 30,000, this could be $8 million, $6, $7, $8 million today to build a gym. I got this one up and running for 300,000, most of which I saved in that pillowcase. It was a big pillowcase.
It must have been a huge pillowcase.
King size.
And did you have a bank back then?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes,
So
I
some of the money was in the
Yes,
bank,
yes,
and some of it
yes.
was in the pillowcase.
Yeah, just in case anyone, IRS people are
Were
here,
you
by the
able
way,
to?
say-
Were you able to borrow money to start the first gym, or was
a
it
little.
just cash?
No, not from a bank. My second one I borrowed from a bank.
What the
back
first one?
then.
Who'd you borrow it from? I'm
I
almost nervous to ask.
No, I had a couple of my clients were they were the only people. I knocked on hundreds of doors, literally hundreds and hundreds of doors to raise money, and everyone laughed at me. I mean, I still don't have a suit. I still looking like this, with muscles coming out my, and I'm doing a gym, So I mean, people were so mean, and but I had some clients who had money, and they believed in me, or they didn't believe in me, but they just felt bad. And so I got a couple of money, a little money from some clients. My parents aren't rich, but they gave me whatever they had, So I got a little money from some family and clients.
And is your mom still alive?
My mom is, yeah.
Yeah, and she lives near you in New York?
Yeah, she lives a block from me in New York, and she's totally cool. And yes.
Does she go to the gym?
She did, she's kind of getting lazy at age 90, she's falling.
Come on, I would expect more. You need to push that a little bit.
Yeah, no, we Bartons are tough, but I'm like, Ma, you gotta,
Yeah. So let's turn this a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your mistakes. I know that you told me when we talked earlier that you've made some mistakes, and I did a little bit independent digging, and I read certain things, but I never know what to believe when I read things online. So I'd rather hear it from you.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Maybe,
there's
maybe
so
your
many.
top
I don't even
2
know
or
where to
3.
start.
Well, give us your top 3.
Okay. I mean, first of all, I think if you don't make any mistakes, you didn't take enough risks. And I definitely took. I was really rolling the dice with a lot of things. I did things so differently. And talk about brand. It's in every detail, things that you do. I did things very differently. I did all my own ads, and some of them were very controversial. And I got in some, I got hate mail and things like that. Now, the gym business, there's mistakes and there's mistakes. You can fire the wrong person and somebody like, trashes your name, whatever. But also, if you do a bad location, you spend a lot of money for a mistake. And so, when I took on a couple of investors and to grow the business, they came to me. It was like, but one of my big mistakes was, there was in 2008, there was no big projects going on anywhere in the country except one in Seattle. And it was like this mixed-use project. And they had like, the anchors were Neiman Marcus, and there was like Hermes was going in there, and they had residential, and they had Microsoft offices, and Jimmy Choo, and the local hot restaurants, and everybody was going in there. And they came to me and said, we want you to have your gym there, and we'll give you like $200 a foot. $7 million they wanted to give me to build out a gym. And my partners were like, you got to do this. It's like, they pushed me into doing it. And it was just, I didn't know that market. Usually I really know my market. And I'll build a place and staff it and create like a culture around the local taste and sensibility. And I want it to resonate with the local people. So they were all different from each other. They looked different. And they, their messaging was like different. Like Chicago is not New York. So many New Yorkers go to Chicago, they're like, oh, it's New York. Look, it looks like New York. We're gonna go in there and do our New York thing. And like, they're not from New York. They're from Wisconsin. Like, they think totally differently. I'm sorry, Wisconsinites, but like, we're just a different breed. And it's great. They're like great people, but they want to know the value, what they're spending the money on. In New York, like, oh, I'll join the more expensive place, or like, I'll buy the more expensive, can of tuna, whatever, must be better. Not in Chicago. So I learned like these markets, but Seattle, I had no fucking, idea what I was getting into. And that was a big mistake.
I mean, what's wrong with Seattle?
Everything's wrong with Seattle, for me.
I mean, you look kind of grungy. Seattle's kind of grungy.
No, I know. I went out there with my Doc Martens and my flannel shirts expecting to like go Nirvana. It was not like that at all. People didn't want to shop at Neiman Marcus. I had no idea. They didn't want to go to Hermes. No, they wear like the mountain climbing, like Patagonia clothes.
Yeah.
And they were like driving, Buicks, and and they had money. These were all like these Microsoft millionaires who were like had money in the bank, but they didn't want it. They didn't want to be like conspicuously flashy. This isn't like L.A. It's not New York, like where you are like what you wear. And the people were very quiet about what they consumed, and so like I was this New York brand coming in, and I really had to overcome this huge sort of battle to prove that there was a quality product there. Which there is, like, just alternatively, like going to Chicago, like people, like I did these outrageous ads that people were horrified by, and then they came and they understood the connection to.
I'm sorry, can you possibly explain a little bit more about the ads?
Oh, the ads.
Like, well, because you mentioned it twice now, and you said they were offensive, and
so I was
it's
trying
like,
to make,
I don't think you should worry about offending anybody. I just
trying to create a tiny bit of controversy.
Okay.
So, well, I had this. I had a tagline, "Look better naked," which I copyrighted, and it became a big thing for some. Like people loved it. It was copied all over the place. I had to hire one law firm just to go around and junk other businesses from using it. Gyms used it. Those Kardashians, one of them wrote a book entitled. Everybody Kardashians. Anyway, like people all use this, like, copied this tagline, "Look better naked." The only reason I came up with it is that my first ad I ever did, I had to pay by the letter. So it was like, "Look better naked," and that's it. Like name on the bottom. And I got like an international advertising award for print advertising. It's called the RAC Award. Anyway, but I did these ads, and I would take pictures that I thought were like just provocative.
Pictures of you?
No, like one was like I don't want to get like canceled now because this was years ago. But like it was like a woman in like a champagne glass, like dripping chocolate on her with like a cherry on her head.
Okay, I can see why that would be offensive.
It was just,
I get
it was, but but there was a humor. It was like the language of a fashion ad, but with a little bit like, look, I'm not taking myself too seriously. You know what I mean? Like other gyms were trying to get this like sort of fashiony thing down, but it was kind of like you have to be this high to get on the ride, which I'm sure you can relate to how exciting that is. So. I was just trying to say, look, we're having fun. Like this is, we're going to be a little bit like, we're going to push the envelope a little bit, but notice us and then come in and see like what this place is, because it's really good.
Right.
And so like in Chicago, I did great. Seattle was a mistake. So that was like one of the example of a big mistake. Another huge mistake was I needed capital. Somebody, like one source fell out. I was in a growth mode and needed capital, and this one firm they did this kind of mezzanine financing, and like they were going to give me some debt, and I needed it, and I was kind of desperate, and I should have just been more patient. But I had this cousin who had like a finance background, and they liked him, and they said he had introduced me to them, and they said, we want you to give him the position of CFO for us to fund you. And I knew this. My cousin was like not the right person for this job, and he wanted a contract. And my other investor was like, give him the contract. Like, what's the worst that could happen? It's your cousin. Well, the worst that could happen happened. Like, he was really bad. And we had a contract. And he sued me for like a lot of money. And it was just like, you know, this was just one of these things where like, you talk about like capitalizing business, raising capital when you're a small business and trying to grow, and you don't have like, bank relationships. Like early on, I was able to borrow from banks, but then that stopped happening. So
was the cousin incident one of the reasons why you left David Barton Gyms?
It led to it because it led to a fight with the investors, and there was it was like the beginning of the end. We all fought with each other whose fault it was. It's like, well, it's your cousin. Well, you wanted to. Anyway, it was really bad. A lot of things happened. We didn't protect ourselves from him. It was like cost a lot of money, and it could have ended the business.
Yeah.
Do
you still talk to your cousin?
No.
I don't want to get too personal, but just curious.
I don't talk to him or any part of his family, like his whole like parents, like his cousin. I don't talk to anybody.
Out of there. Okay, so you left David Barton Gyms, the actual business, and then after that, did you start a new enterprise?
Yeah, I had been planning it before I left David Barton Gym. It's called Temple, and it was like 20 years later. So this is like kind of me growing up. Like the David Barton Gym had a little bit of a velvet rope thing. I speak a lot about like design and branding, and I remember one of my talks was like everything I learned about branding I learned at Studio 54, which is sort of true. So I was going to Studio 54. I'm 15 years old, and they had this velvet rope outside, and it was all about who they didn't let in, And
wait, so when you were 15, did you get into Studio 54?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how this works at all. Back then,
probably because I was 15, they were like, "That's cool, kid." Anyway, and I was like an adorable little kid, So, David Barton Gym had that sort of velvet rope. It was a little snobby. It was like we're New York snobs. I mean, we were really good to everybody who came in, but there was a little bit of an attitude, which I think that the velvet rope was just loosened up a little bit at Temple. So it was really way more kind of, democratic, and that we're sort of for everybody. It wasn't like, oh, we're cool downtown New York brand, which was, me at 26 years old, I was, it was snobbier.
Right.
So Temple was, there was some new science I brought into it, some metabolic science analysis. Again, this is, understanding the body. Like trainers usually don't get an education like biochemistry, which is really, it wasn't my major, but I studied a lot of nutrition here. I started out as a nutrition major, and I was like trying to bring biochemistry into it. And back then, there was like this huge seminar, like Intro to Nutrition, and I was raising my hand and saying like, I don't think, I think what you're saying is stupid. I was not popular in nutrition class, but I was like trying to bring the biochemistry into the nutrition part, but they didn't have it together yet. It was like you had nutrition, then you had your chemistry, and I'm like, no. The way the body works, like whoever designed their body was a chemist, not a physicist.
Yeah.
This thing, they had this thing about like, it was kind of like thermodynamics, the way they looked at the body, and it's not correct, anyway, not to get into it. See, there's my nerd.
Yeah,
my inner nerd that
I'm glad it's coming out. That's good. You're very well-rounded. So let's talk more about Temple. So is Temple operating? How many locations does it have?
Yeah, I sold Temple. We were open a year and a half, and a guy walked in. He had this big public company that had gyms, and he said, I want to buy Temple. And I threw out a number. He said yes, and I sold it. But also had an agreement that, it was a big number. Like, we made a lot of money after a year and a half of operating. So well, that's great.
Was it just one location?
One location. Okay. And we had an agreement they were going to abide by brand standards if they grew and pay me to consult, so that I would like design their gyms, get a fee for designing, and just stay on like a retainer and consult to them, make sure that their brand was high end. They ran a sort of, not a low end brand, not a budget, but like a middle of the road kind of, not high end, not low end, like the middle.
And do they want your celebrity attached to it? So like, were you,
Yeah,
were
they
you going to be
wanted
part of
to
the
trade
marketing?
on my name and kind of, I had a reputation. This was a New York-based thing, for the most part, New York-based. And they did a couple more temples. I did one more with them, and then I couldn't do it. They were just not operating in a way that for me, like, I can't, I have to do things the way my vision allows me to feel good about it. Like, if it kills me, if it bankrupts me, like, I would trade bank accounts with these people in a heartbeat, but I wouldn't trade, businesses with them. Like, I don't want to be in the business of just like taking people's money and not giving a shit about what happens when they come to the gym and whether they stay or not and whether they leave. Like, this just not me. I can't do it. Life's too short. And I got into this thing just like because of, I mean, I love like creating this thing and showing people a way to do things better. I have a little anecdote. So like, I got a call about, I don't know, a year ago, this company, the big company in Europe, and they did a gym and they copied one of my gyms. And my gyms look very kind of unique and they're very like visually arresting, and they copied it literally. And I called the guy who runs, one of the top guys, and he said, yeah, we copied your thing, we like looked at what you do and we copied it, and I'm like, okay. And I went to see it, and it had nothing to do with like what I do. Like, you walked in and it was just different. It's not the design, it's not the look. I mean, you could make a big wonky light fixture, but there was a reason I put the light fixture there, and that's not like the brand. The brand it's every little thing you do. It's how you answer the phone, like when you think of Harley Davidson, like a brand comes to mind, you know what I mean? Like when you think of Rolex, like it's not just the motorcycle. I don't know who rides Harley Davidsons, it's probably Wall Street guys, it's not like all Hell's Angels, but like you have this image, it's like, like a bikers, and it's so, I really did create this thing that people had a very like strong identification with, and understanding of like what it meant to be like, a part of this brand.
So you did David Barton, you did Temple. Are there other gyms that you did or now doing? Like, like it seems like you're almost like a glutton for punishment. Like, to keep doing these, like, you must just absolutely love it. And by the way, talking about, I think I'm 1 year older because I graduated in '87, so I'm assuming I'm like 1 year older.
No, well, I took some semesters off.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't. I didn't like to sit still in a classroom, so I kept taking off time and going to work. I worked. I did all these things to like, and I graduated. But
yeah. So anyway, but I'm thinking back to that Studio 54 thing. I'm
58.
Okay, so am I. So okay. Have people here gone to Studio 54? Anybody?
Oh, you did.
Tiffany had.
I was there when I was 15.
You guys are.
I remember you.
You're there at the same time.
I would sneak up from DC.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God, that was a time.
Sharon went there as well. That's.
But we'll have to talk later.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure those connections were made before we left. Okay. So now, what's your latest business?
So I'm doing a new one. It's called You, like the letter U, because like David Barton Gym was about me, like entree into my world, whatever that was, and then Temple was kind of Temple is like about the universe and the body, and this sort of like like Temple, like salvation through like corporal reality, and so this You is a new one. It's You. It's like I'm doing this one place. It's in Chelsea, in Manhattan, which is my neighborhood where I live, and I lived there a long time. And so it's like the people who show up, that's who the gym is. I realized the gym is really the people who come there, the members. Like, that's what makes the gym what it is. You can give it this, like, and the environment's going to be spectacular. I've got, like, people I've collected over the years are working on it, and they're spectacular people. Like, this guy, Charles Renfro, who's one of the greatest architects in the world, is doing this, like, just as a favor. He's helping me, like, design it, and I have some other people who are building cool things. So it's this phenomenal, spectacular place. But I'm bringing into it, like, there's a group called Precision Health Alliance. They're based in Australia, but it's like epigeneticists have come up with this thing over the past, like, over a decade. And they've got a huge database, and they've figured out how to marry, like, the genotype and the phenotype. And so it's like, just to make a long story short, it's like having a robot that simulates the best trainer in the world tell you how to work out. And what's hard about exercise is that what works for you doesn't work for you. Like, two different people do the same thing, get very different outcome. And this has really taken the guesswork out of it and very specifically tells people through many different sciences, specifically the expression of genetics, not just the genes you're born with, but the epigenetics. Your environmental and epigenetic software that happens over your lifetime, like how this affects, like when you should exercise, what you should eat, what hormones dominate your moods and the time of your day, and it's so cool. So we're bringing that into it, and some technology devices that will really like make your results exercise work. It's like lightning, rocket fuel for your exercise. Some of the things we're doing technology-wise, recovery stuff that's medical level. Machines that are like adaptive resistance with computers and motors, like all this cool stuff. So it's
And is it opening soon? Or is
it's opening in a month.
Wow.
So coming up here was not easy. I had to drag myself away. But
And where is it?
it's in New York City. It's in Chelsea,
okay.
23rd Street.
Like when we come down, can we go?
23rd, 215 West 23rd Street. Please come. It's called You. And, yes.
So, and I've been getting some texts during the presentation from some of you, which is interesting. So I'm not going to show this to the audience because it's too small, but someone just texted me that.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah. So that's.
I can understand why that's a little controversial.
Yeah. So stuff like that. A little not. Just a little controversial.
Yeah. This is an ad from. There's no date on it, but I'm assuming that's a long time ago because you don't look much like this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, probably a little retouched, but it's probably like 15 years ago. So that was at David Barton Gym. So that was like, before 2013.
Yeah.
But when you said you're getting texts, I thought people were saying like, get that guy off the stage.
No. I'll say that. I'll leave that for the Q&A. Speaking of which, so we should probably jump to that. We have about 10 minutes tops. So if there's audience Q&A, I'd love to get some questions going. Just raise your hands. I don't see anybody. Come on, this is an interesting person here.
I mean, I don't,
Let's go. I could keep asking questions.
There's a question.
Where's the question? Oh, here we go.
Hi, so I'm a freshman at Cornell, and I have been going to Planet Fitness, I'm going to be honest, for the past 3 years, and I really believe that the people that attend the gym are the ones that make it. But one thing that I notice is, I would say probably around like New Year, January 1st, January 2nd, you see a whole gym full of people. And then like you get into midsummer and
they're not there anymore.
And half the gym is gone. So when you started your gym, what was the thing that you did to keep your customers coming back? And also, I think that one of the main reasons that people kind of disappear from the gym is that they don't see the results that they're looking for, and they really don't know how to go about that. So did you invest in their nutrition? Because I know that's a big part of maintaining the results.
One word. It's the staff. I hired like people to take care of, like there's customer service, there's training, there's information, there's helping people, there's talking to them when they come in, and that sort of permeates through the members. And Planet Fitness, like they'll hire like one, their model is to get like 30, 40,000 members into a location. And obviously like if more than 1% show up, they're in trouble. So, I have a much smaller number of people, who come. I charge a lot more than Planet Fitness. But, people also clock like how much time they spend in the gym. If you have a gym where 100% of the people use the gym, like theoretically, like you could charge a lot more because people obviously value it more. One thing I noticed after like COVID especially is that I think how people value their time has risen on their hierarchy of like values, like, and time is like a very precious asset now. And like a lot of people are moving to New York now. Like there was a lot of hype about New York being like over, whatever. New York is back so strong. And a lot of people are moving there. Like you can't get an apartment in New York right now. And people, I think one reason they have interesting lives if they want to. And so I provide something for them where they want to spend time there. Like somebody might spend, I'm figuring like 10% of their waking hours like in the gym. Like, that's a lot of time to spend for a place you don't care about. So like Planet Fitness in particular, nothing against it. It's a great like value to pay like 10, 20 bucks.
Budget friendly.
What's that?
Budget friendly, I'd say, for me.
Budget friendly,
yeah.
But it's, I mean, I charge like a lot, you know, like 20 times what they charge. But you know, they give you a room full of equipment, and there's a guy behind the desk who's maybe nice if you're lucky. But that's what they're offering. So, you know, there's an operation there too. It's a different model. It's a different business.
Thank you.
Sure.
So do you find that your members come back throughout the year? Like, are they just...
Well, there's much less drop off. Yeah, like there's your people who like, and if somebody doesn't come, like I'll call them and say like, you know, like I heard your cat's sick. Like, is it okay? You know, haven't seen you in the gym. Like, or I'll have somebody call. Like, we follow up with people, and so it's really like if you take care of people, I think over time you become an institution. You know, I don't know that Planet Fitness has really tried to go that route.
So we have one in the back, two in the front.
First of all, thank you so much for coming up to Ithaca. Sounds like you're really busy. My name's Eric. I'm a grad student over at the business school. Random just vignette. I did my undergrad near your Astor Place location many years ago. I remember all our friends would be like, hey, the front desk will kind of give you an attitude if you just walk in there to check out the place. So it was definitely a velvet rope. You alluded to COVID, and I think one of the companies you mentioned, Town Sports Clubs, they went out of business real quick. So kind of just more lessons learned and where the direction of the fitness industry is heading after COVID, because it seemed like a total disruptor. Thank you.
I'm not sure if there's a question in there. Town Sports had been around for a long time. I sold Temple to them, and then somebody new had taken over, cut a lot of expenses. Their stock price went way up. They had a lot of money. They bought my gym. They weren't taking care of their facilities, and over time they saw their membership drop off. Their stock price dropped. They've filed for like Chapter 7, I believe, and split off into a couple of different iterations. The guy who had bought the gym from me and had run that public company, which was Town Sports, he still has Temple, and he kept Temple, which was, you know, in the bankruptcy that they had. He held on to Temple and is growing it.
So we had a question or two up here in front,
One back here.
in the back.
Cool. One question I had is, first of all, always happy to see, I live in Chelsea as well, so I'm excited to see the new location. But, you know, you're talking about like epigenetics and metabolomics, like relatively complicated concepts. How do you think about like training your staff or like building that sort of more complicated, maybe not traditional expertise into kind of trainers and the staff at a gym?
It's very hard. Listen, it's a tough way to go. Like, the easiest thing would be to do something, you know, where trainers just learn, like they get the certification, which is, to me, like these certifications that trainers get are about as important as a NASCAR driver getting a state issue driver's license. It means nothing. So like teaching the trainers, so they're going through a course with that company that is, you know, they do the epigenetics and other sciences that have gone into, like as doctors and scientists and you know, and chemists and biochemists, and there's chronobiology. There's all this stuff that's gone into it, and so they are teaching the trainers, and you know, there's a certification at the end, and the trainers have to really do a lot of work to learn this stuff, and then it's boiled down to something very simple for them to they don't diagnose their client. They ask some questions, they take some measurements, they do some things, and then there's a platform that gets populated which shows this person kind of a lot of information, which has been uncannily accurate for everyone that I've seen go through it. So, I mean, it's a great question. It's like, it's a really, you know, I'm trying to bring the gym business into modern times. I'm dragging it, kicking and screaming into the new millennium because like these businesses are still doing the same thing they've been doing for 30 years, and science is like, you know, like marched along at a nice clip, and the gyms are still doing like this old thing. So.
Great. Amy, can you bring the mic up here, or do you have? We have one question here. Yep. Thank you.
Hi, I'm also in New York City. I was actually a member of your gym on Fifth Avenue years ago, on Madison Avenue.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a question. So what was the thinking with you and your investors, since you were so brand intensive and conscious, of building it out with your own money versus the franchise model, which a lot of gyms have gone?
Franchise is a tough thing, and owning the locations and not owning the real estate, but like owning the businesses and doing it ourselves versus franchising. There's a lot more control over the operation. Franchising, like you're really dependent on, you've got to really simplify it. It's a tough model to do franchises. Like you have to have a very to follow, you know, like map, you know, and it's complicated. What I was doing at David Barton Gym, which is that 85th and Madison one, like it's, you know, we had like 70 trainers working there. You know, they were very highly trained. I don't know if you ever like how much time you spent or whatever,
Yeah,
but like,
great.
it was, you know, we were dealing with a sensitive, very, you know, a population that's, you know, sensitive to customer service. They're marketed too heavily. They're very, you know, they're not going to be forgiving if they pay the kind of prices we're charging, and we don't give them like a certain level of service. So, like, that's a tough thing to
But
franchise.
the model you chose is very, very capital intensive versus a franchise model,
Sure.
you know, and the royalties.
But that place made money. I mean, it did very well. Like, the return on,
Yeah, I loved it there. It was fantastic.
thank you. Thank God somebody has a nice experience. I'm like worried you were going to say, it sucked, man. You guys dropped a dumbbell on my foot. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for all the info and the passion around fitness. I have a question for entrepreneurs and founders. So as a long-term founder, fitness has been a big part, I think, of being able to handle the journey and the process. And right now I have 3 startups, and I'm always making time for fitness because I'm like, when I don't have time to go and work out, that's when I need to work out every day. So I'm curious with you as both a founder and a fitness, you know, maestro, right? Like tips you would give to fellow entrepreneurs and founders on how to fit fitness in while you're doing startups.
Thanks for good question. And by the way, I don't believe that you are old enough to have been to Studio 54, so I have to call.
54 and then milk bars.
Yes, the milk bar. So anyway, but I don't believe you're that old and I loved your talk, by the way. You know, you have to schedule things. Look, like the busiest people in the world, you'll find if you look at like workout, you know, it's just got to be scheduled in. You know what? Just sleep faster. You know, if I work out, I am way more productive. Like if I miss a workout, first of all, I'm miserable. You know, I like working out. Most people don't love it the way I do. So I'm like blessed with this love of working out. Most people don't love it, but if you keep doing it every day and you keep yourself feeling, you know, physically, it's not just like your body and, you know, your muscles and taking care of like the structure of the muscles, but, you know, it's your neurotransmitters, you know, you want to keep a nice, you know, level of chemicals floating through the brain that's going to keep you, you know, feeling good. And you will need less sleep, and you'll be more efficient and productive during your working hours. And I think, you know, and the other thing is like you can keep really in good shape with like 4 30-minute sessions a week, you know. 3 gets a little tough. I recommend 4, but like it could be 30 minutes, you know. You get in 30 minutes, you know, shower and get back to your desk.
What would you do in those 30 minutes?
I would keep it to like strength training, hard strength training, which is, you know, even if you just want to stay like lean, because people come in like, oh, you know, I've gotten a little like soft and fluffy, so I'm going to run on the treadmill. But that doesn't really work in the long term. Like in the very short term, you might like metabolize some body fat. But I would do strength training. It's better for keeping lean, keeping your muscles, you know, tight, so that, you know, like when you have more time and you can get the body composition that's perfect for you, like you'll see some nice, you know, tightness, and it's just the most efficient thing to do. Like without going into a whole spiel, I would do like some basic strength training things like squats, deadlifts, some few upper body things, a lot of the back, the posterior chain, keep you healthy and, you know, posture good.
Sit straight. Okay. One more question from Gwen, and then we have
Just
to
a
break.
quick last comment. I'm so grateful, David, that you came. We met this year and had oddly so many things in common. I think to reiterate his hustle, building his own capital with the pillowcase. I use a credit card.
15
but
credit cards.
the 15, the power of the brand story, and really the passion of your brand story resonates, I think, to every founder, and implementing that. But I just want to thank you for really revolutionizing the gym experience that we all experience in our own gyms or workout places, as I really believe is because of David. And lastly, I can't believe I didn't do any name dropping and didn't even get to living in the Chelsea Hotel.
I lived at the Chelsea Hotel for 20 years, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what names to drop, but except Gwen, drop Gwen's name. I'm here for Gwen and Zach. These guys were so great. I had to come up here and do this. Anyway, yeah, for you guys who don't know me, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but the gym business was really and still can be a pretty lame business. I would be embarrassed to be in it if it wasn't for my gyms and a couple of others that I respect. But the New York Times once called me the man who made working out cool. And I don't know that I made it cool or if it is cool, but I definitely, changed it. I tried very hard to change it so that, whether it's cool or not, so that it's good. I want it to be a good thing because I believe am I, curing cancer? No, but I'm making my own little corner of the world happier. And maybe that does something more than what you might think, for people, and then if that can spread, I think we need that, especially right now. Working out in the gym is one of the few things where you're not sitting at the computer. You can date, go to school, buy books, read, all this stuff you do on the computer. It's such a lonely world out there today. And I think and I see a lot of people coming back to the gym, and I think you take your call, it's okay. People need to be around other people, human contact, conversation, eye contact, fear of rejection. This shit's important, these young kids that don't know. They hired an assistant, and I was like, would you call? He goes, I don't make phone calls. He doesn't make phone calls. I'm like, what do you do? He's like, well, I do all this other stuff, but I don't make phone calls. You don't know how to talk to people? It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Okay, so we need to break for lunch. David, thank you so much.